ask a third culture kid to ask yourself, where is home, right? And I sometimes, when people, in the past, I used to answer, when people ask me, where's home? I used to ask them, is that a quick trick question? Is that like, are you trying to trick me? Because, yeah, because I was just, at one stage, I did not, to be honest and completely vulnerable, I did not feel at home in Belgium. After many years of studying in China and Europe and then moving back to Singapore for my first job after university, I did not feel at home in Singapore anymore because I'd left 7 years prior.
Your first job
Yeah,
was in Singapore.
So I did my Chinese studies, did my business degree in Belgium, moved back to Singapore with the idea like, okay, I'm gonna live. That's it. I'm going back home, gonna work from there. But I had completely out. I felt like, yeah, okay. I mean, I felt like I was going back to the past, like I was reliving an old movie. Whereas the protagonist, the main character, i.e., myself, was a changed man. Had become an adult. I completely outgrew the place. It felt like I was kind of watching my life go, happen from outside. It was a really strange feeling.
Yeah,
So
again,
and then mainly it is because, okay, a lot of the my childhood friends I grew up with had also left Singapore, and Singapore had changed. Of course, I had changed, and the situation, of course, was also different. I was not studying there. My parents weren't there anymore. Friends had left. Although I have to say, I do still have, I still do have some, some childhood friends that I grew up with in Singapore. So
what I find interesting, very recently I asked you, hey, how do you feel? And they say, well, I feel great because I left Belgium.
yeah,
So it's funny enough is that for as long as I know you, you've gone, you visited various places, but you always end up back in Belgium
yeah,
for a little while and then back in Singapore.
yeah. And then I escaped. Or no, it's like Singapore or Southeast Asia. Let's say Southeast Asia.
Right. But I mean, like, it's interesting. Last year you said that, and you left Belgium end of
Not
last
only
year,
Singapore.
landed here in Bali, and then you ended up in December, 2023 in Singapore, and we had a conversation about
Felt
how you felt
yeah.
being back in Singapore. How
How-
did it feel to be back in Singapore?
Honestly, people like going back to a place where you grew up after so many years. So not after, not going back for my first job or whatever, but going back now after all these years, it really felt like home again. I felt like I'm back in my habitat. I mean, of course, it's Singapore. It's still very, I would say, money-driven, clean. Anglo-Saxon slash, Chinese-ruled kind of society, where a lot of rules and regulations and laws. But it's comfortable, it's convenient, and I just, I'm a bit older now, I'm in my 30s, and I have to say that it felt really comfortable, and funnily enough. A lot of good friends. I know I've said friends a lot on this in this episode, but a lot of the guys that I grew up with are also back in Singapore, having jobs, living there, living with their partners, and yeah, it did actually it did something to me. Yeah, I'm
So-
really glad to be back on this side of the world, and it felt familiar. And I'm looking forward to actually maybe even I actually have a job interview today for a job in Singapore. So wish me luck, people, because Dimi might be going back.
I love it, and I think a lot of third culture kids listening to this, and hopefully parents too, because I think it's important for parents to listen to this, so they're also aware. I have children, and I'm very aware. I have a lot of conversation with Dimitri, so try to be mindful as well. While I make decisions that are obviously beneficial to me directly as the head of the family, also beneficial to the rest of the family, I have to coordinate obviously with my wife as well, who has her career, my career, and then also immediately we think about the kids and what this means to the kids, and I do believe that the world is full of opportunity, and I also do believe that the same way as the best time to negotiate a salary or compensation is to actually move to another company, and that conversation leads pretty much always to a better salary and better work terms. I also think that oftentimes the great opportunities happen when you move to another city, another country, another continent. Is a big decision to make, but it often gets you ahead in the pros. They more often than not outweighs the negative. But what that means to you, um, is not the same as what it would mean to, or it can mean to your children. So Dimitri's parents have this, idea that they were going to this place for a few years and they were coming back home. But for Dimitri, he was leaving home and he was moving to his second home that would soon replace his home,
Yeah.
his parents' home.
Yeah.
And so that, to be very mindful and very aware of what, what it means to you as an adult, but what actually it will mean to your children is almost unavoidable. That having them
So
spend
parents
this,
that are tuned into the
Yeah.
show, of course,
Yeah.
kind of like my parents. Of course, my parents, of course, only want, like all parents, want the best for their children, right?
That's right.
So at the time,
Absolutely.
my dad, of course, had his opportunity for his career, but also, also for the, I would say the best, to have to give the best life
Provided
possible,
an amazing
provide
lifestyle,
provide an amazing
great
life to
school,
a family.
trips back
And
home.
our parents, of course, do well, take the best choices, the best choice that they can at a given moment in time with the tools that they have for their kids and for the family. So I'd always be super appreciative and grateful for that. Although I had many difficulties going back to Europe after growing up in Singapore, I've always been very mindful and appreciative of that, and it's shaped me who I am today. So
Absolutely.
That's William, maybe even for your kids, you've lived in quite a few countries. Your children are now getting a little bit older, still 8-9 years old. Your eldest one, and they're also growing up here in Bali. Growing up abroad. So
Yeah.
even for you, it's of course I know you're doing the best that you can with the tools that you have at your disposal, and it's important because. Okay, maybe your kids or your situation is different to my dad's or our family situation, as in that we lived in one country, one foreign country, i.e. Singapore, for many, many years, so it was home. You have lived in a couple of countries with your kids, and who knows what the future holds. And there's a lot of families like that, as you mentioned, the diplomats, military kids, business families. So it's important, like all of that, actually, I just want to kind of distill that to a conversation I had with one of my French one of my French kids at the same school we were in from Singapore. I asked him one day, so where's home for you? And he told me, look, Dimi, I've lived in so many countries, way more countries than I actually only grew up in Singapore, right? During my formative years, and China and Thailand, but okay, with my parents essentially in Singapore. And he told me, look, Dimi, home is where the family is,
That's right.
Yeah, and I'd like to add to that as well. Home is where the family is, and home is where the heart is. Okay, people? So never forget where you feel at home or where you feel most comfortable. If that's with your family and it feels good, then just follow.
Yeah.
Follow
And,
your heart.
closing remarks. Because you're so right about that. I think for parents, I think my feedback really is, now that I am one, now that I've gone from being the kid growing up overseas and going through all of this, to now being the father who is bringing his kids to these various countries. I think just set realistic expectations. My kids hold different passports, and they jokingly say, well, I mean, they do it, but I mean, it's a bit of for them, it's a bit of a game right now, that depending on the child they're admitting, and depending on the setup, if it's a sort of like a hotel, or if it's on an airport, or a different, or a given country, they
military
choose
base.
they choose to say, this is my passport, oh, this is where I'm from, and they don't bring up the other nationalities, right?
That's so unique.
And then they go to they meet another kid, and they say, and depending on the kid, if it's Indonesian or Singaporean or European or North American, then they use this other passport, and
That's
they say, no,
so
I'm a national of this country. And I ask him sometimes, like, why do you pick this country? I mean, you could just, it doesn't matter, like, they don't care which country you're. You could say you're Indonesian all the way. Nobody, I mean, it wouldn't, maybe it's a conversation starter. Maybe he's just a kid and doesn't care. He will move on and say, okay,
Yeah.
do you like Minecraft? You have a Minecraft. What's your Minecraft account? Because that's really it. But my point and what's important
Wow.
is because I think, just be flexible with your kids. Much like Dimitri here and myself, we found our way. We found our way to, to deal with
find a way.
multiculturalism and all these experiences,
And to fitting in essentially, to feeling comfortable with your environment.
I mean, they make up a good chunk of who we are, and we are the ones who have to who have to live with those experiences and make sense of them. And it's not necessarily, parents telling their children, well, don't remember, don't forget you're British, or don't forget you're German, or don't forget you're American at the end of the day. Yes, and all of that is true. You might hold these passports and everything, but appreciate the person that you have in front of you. Appreciate the person that you give the opportunity to to experience this, and who they are is who they are. And if they
Yeah.
if they choose to maybe identify themselves, introduce themselves in a particular way, because that's how they feel, how they make
that
sense of
moment,
that experience.
and how that moment
That's
feels
so
the
be
most
it.
comfortable.
So
Exactly.
be it. So be
Exactly.
it. They're good people. They're learning. They're growing, and that's all that matters.
Be appreciative of their
Absolutely.
talents and their worldview, because at the end of the day, you are giving them a great opportunity to become third culture kids, to become global citizens, to
Absolutely.
become
Amazing human beings.
amazing human beings, and potentially let's say life changing kind of individuals, or individuals who can really make a difference and make a change. Like look at Barack Obama, for example. He spent a big chunk of his youth growing up in here in Indonesia.
Absolutely.
President of the United, former president of the U.S. So a lot of these third culture kids to end up, of course, it depends on each personality, of course, but to have something special and can become really the best version of themselves. So keep supporting your kids. You have living proof right here, and William and myself, that everything will be okay. Parents and you, third culture kids listening,
It's a positive
honestly,
experience.
I mean, look, let's say if you just what would be, for example, just to kind of conclude our show for today or the episode. What would you tell? What would you tell the kids living abroad right now? Like, what would be your top three recommendations for kids living abroad?
I think one is don't need to put yourself in any box. You are who you are.
Yeah.
Just make sense of it the best way you can, and things will fall into place as you grow.
Yeah.
No stress, no pressure.
Number two, I will like to add to that as well. Just be proud. Be proud of who you are. For all kids, especially kids living abroad in growing up in a multicultural environment. Be proud. Be proud of who you are. Be curious. Be respectful, and be open to all the other beautiful cultures you have around you and beautiful kids, because you guys really are the future of of the world. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Number three.
I would say you are also an ambassador of the culture you come from. So, to the extent that you can, try to bring some of that culture to the new place where you're at. Just share some of those experiences so that people get to experience those countries and in that culture through you. And by doing that, you also reliving those experiences. You also connecting with that culture that to better or worse, you left behind. It's really helpful to stay connected. You go see your friends, but it's also a good exercise to continue to learn about that culture, because you're not, unless you make the effort,
Yeah.
you're not going to do it as often or be exposed because you're away. So helps others, helps you.